stirred up or still. And let your mind relax here. Remember the reason you came. And set an intention to use that time well. So now let's recite the four measurables. It's in the gold prayer book on page 34. You may have to share books. May all sentient beings have happiness in the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So we can take a moment to just reflect on the reality that right at this moment, while we're sitting in this semi-comfortable room, perhaps not on such a comfortable chair, and maybe the temperature is not exactly right, but right at this moment, there are all kinds of living beings that are in deep suffering. You know, they don't have enough to eat, or their shelter is a bombed out building in a war-torn country, or they're in prison. They're living on the streets, don't have a home at all. So we have this pretty easy moment in this time. So right now, we're here, we're relatively safe if the building doesn't fall down, you know. So making the best use we can of that time, you know, is a pretty smart thing to do because things change. So we could be one of those people in a war-torn country. Doesn't take much to imagine going to war. We do it often, you know. But right now, we have these really good conditions. So might as well use them to try to help our mind, our heart, you know, find wisdom and compassion. And so we can think about, you know, it's not that we have to feel guilty about having good conditions. We just want to use our good conditions well, you know, so that we can be of benefit to those around us and be of benefit to those with harsh conditions. So we may not be able to do anything in this moment to help someone else, but we can work on our minds so that we're ready whenever the opportunity presents itself to be of help. So the more that we can remember that we are not all by ourselves, singular, that we are part of a whole cosmos of living beings, and our actions matter, they ripple out, so that if we're, not so kind as we're driving over, then that person we're not so kind to might not be so kind to someone else, and and it ripples out. And we all have real confidence in how our negative minds ripple out. We can see it if somebody walks in and they're in a terrible mood, and how it kind of flows out and affects us all. And the same is true of our positive minds, so that, if we can keep finding that place, that's the energy we bring wherever we go. So that's one way we can always be of help. But it takes practice, and it takes patience with ourselves when we don't succeed at it. So we have to remember that kindness is something that we want to practice towards ourselves as well, because it's also contagious. If we're being really harsh on ourselves, it's really easy to be harsh to someone else. So it's sort of like, we don't want to leave ourselves out of the equation. So practicing kindness, we can practice on ourselves. So we've been talking about how we can help ourselves handle circumstances, events, stressors, whatever is happening from time to time during our day. And some of them are really small and some of them are big. How can we work with that? And one way to do it is to practice these situations that are rather repetitive in our lives, conversations with our boss or our coworkers or our partner, or driving to work or driving home from work, or whatever the circumstances are. If we take some time when we don't have, and think about how could that go differently? Picture how it's going now, like the next conversation you have with your coworker or your boss or your friend or, the cashier. And you know that you are uncomfortable in that circumstance. So if you imagine it happening, you can also imagine what's arising for you, to really think of a specific situation and allow the different challenges that arise for you. And then look at what might you be able to do differently, either to reduce those obstacles or to manage them, how to take care of yourself in that moment so that your actions or words, are in line with how you want it to go, as opposed to how it has been going. And if we practice those, we can draw upon that practice when we're in it. We're in the thick of it. So sometimes when we imagine the obstacles, what kind of obstacles arise when we think about our difficult situation, or situations which we seem to kind of habitually respond in a way that we're not happy with?
Frustration.
So frustration. So what would the frustration, how many, let's try to get just a few number of things that cause frustration to arise. So what's underneath frustration?
Impatience.
What's underneath impatience? Yeah, Joy.
They have technological difficulties.
Can you not? Oh,
Technological difficulties.
you mean like, so sometimes frustration is because the thing doesn't work right?
Everything, yes.
Yeah, boy, I can
Desire,
relate.
wanting things to be pleasant.
Okay, so that's underneath it, isn't it? I mean, there's an energy that wants it to go the way we want it to go. You know, and so that could mean a lot of different things depending on the circumstance. So sometimes it's just, can't you just work? I was sitting here after the meditation going, oh, my camera's on. Nothing else is on, but the camera's on. That's interesting, you know? So, okay. So it's about, though, you know, so we want to find the disconnect we have between the idea that we can control everything out here and the reality that we cannot. Oh, we cannot control everything out here. You know, so sometimes the frustration, you know, if it's arising from a place that is something that when we look at it, we recognize, you know, I can't do anything about that. You know, then we can start to look at, why am I making myself miserable over this that I can't do anything about? You know, and so at least for those kinds of circumstances, you can kind of start to work on letting it go when they arise. But you may have to practice this, you know, you know, just sort of like, okay, so often, you know, the computer won't cooperate, the phone won't cooperate, the microphone won't cooperate, whatever. You know, things don't cooperate, the dishwasher doesn't work, the tire is flat on the car, you run out of gas in the most inopportune time, you know, all of those things. There's there's little things we can do, you know, but overall, things break, things don't work. So we can work on the mind that hates that and recognize that the hating that is being generated by your own mind, and it causes extra suffering. You know, that probably the most suffering aspect of things not working is the mind responding to something not working, not the thing. You know, so we want to look at that. What's another thing that can generate frustration? So one thing is that external things might not be working. What else might not be working?
Other people.
Huh?
Other people.
Other people.
My dog poops everywhere.
Hey, there you go. Yeah. Yeah.
By
Yeah.
talking to him, he
Yeah.
doesn't.
He's not listening. Yeah. Oh, it's,
Misunderstanding.
yes. You know, or kind of looks at you like, what are you on about? What problem is this? So, yeah, so there are other living beings that don't cooperate, you know? So we want to look at if we are sort of having these imaginary emotional contracts in our head about others, you know? That, hey, don't you know you're supposed to treat me differently than you are? I may not have mentioned it, but hey, can't you figure that out on your own? We want to really uncover that when we're playing this game with others. I mean, it's not a game because we really get hurt. We hurt each other because of it. But we haven't really looked at, why do I think that they think the same way I do, and that they can read my mind, and that they should do everything in the same way that that they should meet every preference I have. Have you ever noticed how many preferences you have in a day? How do we uncover our preferences? How do we even know that they're there?
That's not what you want. When it's not what you want.
When it's not what you want. Oh no, I don't want this. You know, yeah, and so if that happens all through the day, that's a clue about how much control you have. So, but also, you know, if we're constantly fiddling, you know, like changing the temperature in the room, which I do a lot, you know, getting up several times from your workspace or something, you know, to kind of get something else you need or whatever. That fiddling is a clue about our dissatisfaction. You know, like, and it can be as simple as, I'm bored now, can't there be something else to do, you know? But, you know, now at work, we have a lot of control, don't we, over ourselves. We know how to act right. Why is that? We talked about this last week, I think. Does getting a paycheck ring a bell? You know? So when there's something clearly in it for us that really helps our ability to manage ourselves, you know, think back to first dates. You know, and how, you know, how much softer perhaps you spoke. How you didn't roll your eyes a lot. How you often will say, oh, whatever, it's fine. You know, you choose. So we want to look at how we actually can manage our preferences, and we demonstrate it all the time in the workplace, you know, when we're trying to help our kids with something and we don't want them to sense how out of control we feel, you know. We can manage ourselves. Well, we need to recognize it's because we're motivated. Motivation is extremely important. So if we're working on our mind, we need to find motivation in order to want to kind of get a handle on it. So that's not self-created, that's not true, but you know, like in the workplace, we know what the deal is. I have to perform my job to my boss's satisfaction in order to keep getting a paycheck, you know, and not get let go. So we kind of accept that arrangement to a certain degree. In school, we know we have to do the work that's assigned and da-da-da-da, so that we can get whatever degree or whatever is at the end of it. You know. Sometimes some people actually go to school to like gain knowledge and not just get a grade. But you know, we're all different. So, you know, we want to look at how we have the skills we need to change our reactions, or at least refrain from speaking out, refrain from acting out when we want to, when we see it as important to us, you know. So it's not like we have to learn new skills. We just may have to apply them in new situations, you know. So, like if you want a puppy dog, you know, you may have to accept that you're never going to have an unstained carpet again, you know, or at least, you know, it's like my parents didn't buy any new anything until we were of a certain age. You know, just like, I'm not gonna worry about that now, you know, until we could like hold a glass of grape juice without spilling it all over the place, you know. So, you know, so we want to recognize it's not that we lack the ability, it's more about when we choose to use the ability. And that makes sense. You know, it's really clear to us that, you know, our parents tell us, you know, you have to, you have to graduate from school. So we get lots of helpful hints. But in our personal lives, we're all adults now, okay, nobody's kind of telling us exactly what the expectations are. But somehow, we've got a whole bunch of expectations of others, and others have a whole bunch of expectations about us, and that sometimes clashes. So we don't cooperate with each other. So we rub each other the wrong way. You know. And yet we have an expectation that, you know, others, hey, I'm not asking for much kind of attitude. But actually, we might not be asking for anything. We may just be thinking they can read our minds. So we want to be able to see if we're frustrated and if that frustration is coming from the fact that we haven't done a good job communicating our needs. So that's one way that's an obstacle that can arise in some uncomfortable situations. Another aspect can be this frustration that we have when we don't know what to do, when we feel helpless, when we feel uncertain, of just, like, wow, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And that can feel, fear evoking. And from that, how many people get angry when they're afraid? Yeah, that's going to be a pretty common response. It's just a way to distract us from the fear. What's another way we can respond to fear?
Flight.
Flight.
Flight. Oh, we can run away. Yes, we can escape it altogether. Good luck. So, do we carry it with us? Unless it's, we can perhaps, leave the, not, leave the, what was it? The garage with the tiger in a cage?
Yeah.
I might want to leave here. Okay. What were you going to say?
No, never heard that expression.
Fight or flight?
No, leave the.
Oh, have you, you missed the story?
Yeah,
Somebody found a tiger in a cage in a garage.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just sort of there. Not a very strong cage either. So anyway, that aside, but, so sometimes this idea of fight or flight may have wisdom in it. But we want to look at when we're using, we want to be able to go from reacting to acting. Does that have any meaning to anybody? What's the difference between the two?
React.
Yeah.
When you're acting, you're taking a step back, thinking about what you're going to do instead of just basically responding without thought.
Yeah, so it's like,
more of a conscious decision.
there's more choice involved. You can really evaluate and then choose how you're going to act. Whereas reacting, in Buddhism, we'd say reacting is all about our habit energy. We've created habits of mind that are really we're so familiar with them that they are practically arise before the event. I mean, it's like instantaneous, we're there. And this is why the skill of being able to step back in our mind, to pause before we listen to that energy, before we just put it in motion, becomes really helpful. Because it is these, many of these strong states of mind that in Buddhism we call disturbing states of mind, because when they arise, the mind becomes unpeaceful. And this can be what we associate with positive states of mind, like infatuation, like pleasure, that's, I think Adrian gave me a Dove bar for Valentine's Day. In one bite, it was like, wow, this is really good, So when these, when we have these kinds of responses that arise, they are really powerful. They are hard to step back, so we really have to practice it. To just say, okay, I don't know what to do in these situations, but at the very least, I'm going to not react, so that we can start getting a handle on at least the body and speech. Because we know we can, because we do it at the workplace. We do it with our children when we're being good parents. So, we don't have 100% of those moments, so that's okay. But this is the point. But so often with our partners, it's like we have no restraints in place. You know, it's just like, well, you should just put up with me no matter how I act. Well, that's not true, folks. They might not want to put up with you no matter how you act. You know, so it's this, and if you want not to have the consequence, you want to look at your side, you know. So what's a way we can respond when we're feeling frustrated because we have no clue what to do?
Can I
Judy.
talk about a specific thing that's in my life?
Well, I mean,
It relates, you know, I mean, I don't know what to do. So, it's a simple thing, we have a bike rack, but there are 3 bikes on it that have been the same 3 bikes for 2 years that I've been there. And they're rusty, and the bike rack is in the wrong place, in the wrong angle.
so what's the problem?
And, well, I don't have a place to put my bike. So I've been using a different bike rack, and the person came to me the other day, and he said, you know, young lady, that something bad was coming. He said, you know, you don't belong on this bike rack. This is for this section, you know, and then it turned out he was the president of that section.
Okay.
So, but he saw what I was
Yeah,
dealing
but
with.
we don't need the whole story.
All right,
So-
so I have to go to the president of my association.
Right, and so
I'm
what's the
scared.
problem?
I'm
You're
afraid.
scared,
I'm
okay.
afraid.
Okay, so what can we do when fear arises? How can we sit with fear?
Just stop and reassess.
Or just stop? I think it's so helpful when any of these states of mind arise, you know, any that have that edge of, I think I'm out of control here, you know, fear feels like that to me, you know, it arises. Frustration can feel like that when I'm ready to throw it out the window, you know. So it's this being able to just stop and allow yourself to acknowledge and accept, I'm afraid. Oh, I'm afraid. I have to go one step further and go, and I'm not gonna make it worse. If we waited, if we just pause and not act from that place, the strength of that state of mind lessens, and also it passes. We don't stay in this state. We're not living in a war zone. We're in this state all the time, generating all that adrenaline, you know. So we need to be able to step back and then take our time figuring out how to approach it so that we don't feel overwhelmed with the fear. It's not like we can just take the fear away, you know, because we might not have, you know, I mean, if the fear is they're going to tell me I can't, too bad. There's nothing you can do about it. Just give your bike away. You know, we want to look at, what am I afraid of? When we're not in the moment, because in that moment, we have no wisdom at all. So we need to pause, let that, and then when we're a little quieter about it and we're thinking about it, we can develop sort of a plan of action. And that plan of action can include what we perceive to be possible obstacles, you know. And then, yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Thich Nhat Hanh says we need to have compassion for our own fear.
Right.
And to be comforting to ourselves in those moments.
It's like picking up a crying baby. If there's a baby, you know, just, you know, bawling with that, you know, that sound that you can't ignore because, you know, that's what we're supposed to do. We pick up a crying baby, don't we? We don't have a conversation with it. We don't sit down and go, you know, you really shouldn't feel that way. You know, get over it. We actually try to wait it out. We pick it up and hope, you know, that we're, I don't know, holding them in a way that they feel secure and that whatever moment they're having passes. We wait. And we need to give ourselves the same respect. When our mind's going, you know, whether it's fear, frustration, anger, You know, we have to really step back and go, oh. And you can actually have those images in your mind. It just really depends on who, you know, what you're like. I have the image of Thich Nhat Hanh, or actually I have his voice in my mind going, hello, friend. There you are, fear has arisen once again. Because I'm a very anxious person, so I'm very familiar with that one. But, you know, so it's this, you know, but being able to just pause and recognize that when we're in those states of mind, there's nothing wrong with those states of mind, it's just that there's not wisdom there. You're just under the influence of that strong mental factor of anger or fear or whatever. But underneath it, it's often about the 8 worldly concerns, about either not getting something you want, you know, or getting something you don't want, having your reputation tarnished, you know, being criticized instead of, you know, praised, the fear of pain rather than pleasure, you know, that, oh, this conversation's going to be painful, you know. So we want to recognize underneath all of these things is that basic desire of getting what you want and not what you don't want. And then looking at whether or not that's important in that moment, so that it's not what's driving you. So like in a situation like, you know, well, you know, I need a place for my bike. There ought to be enough places for all the bikes, you know, whatever. So you're trying to come up with you know, problem solve with the board president. You know, how do we solve this problem? Because I have a bike, others have bikes, we don't have enough bike holders. So you work that out. But we can't do that when we're in that mindset of either anger or fear or think of some others. Don't we have other states of mind? We tend to alternate an awful lot. Lesser versions of those.
Impatience.
Impatience, like, you know, the states of mind that are in advance of anger, you know, like annoyance, irritation, impatience. All of those signify we're not getting something, or we're getting something we don't want, or we're not getting what we do want. You know. So that's when we have to step back and we kind of go, oh, I just would really like it to go this way. I think I can let go of that. It's not, you know, not a big deal, you know, if we go to McDonald's or Burger King, you know, when there's no other choice. Those are the only two. You know, so we don't get hooked by our rationalizations why we're right. I'm sorry, my point of view is the only one that's correct here. So we really do want to look and see, you know, is all that's hooking me is the fact that it's not going exactly like I want it to go. And then we kind of can go, well, you know, I can live with that. You know, so little things don't become great big things. But learning how to recognize when we're afraid and then being able to sit with that fear instead of trying to shove it somewhere else, which just makes it blow up in our faces at some point, somewhere, you know, or it turns into anger. So we just want to be able, this is one I think really difficult for us to just sit with the discomfort, whether it's our own or someone else's. You know, the feeling of being helpless is often because we cannot tolerate the discomfort that someone else is experiencing. And, you know, we hate not being able to help. And instead of staying with, being supportive to the other person, we're trying to run away from our own discomfort. That happens often in relationships, you know, so it's this matter of recognizing, well, I just don't like how I feel right now, and I'm giving myself permission to escape. And maybe that's not the way I want to be in this situation. Maybe I want to be able to sit with this with their pain, you know, and not, you know, feel compelled to have all the answers, you know. Sometimes people just need to work something out for themselves. Most of the time we have to work it out for ourselves, I mean, when it comes down to it. Eventually we have to work it out for ourselves. But having supportive companions while we do that, you know, really helps us get through some really hard spots. So it's a matter of, you know, if we can't even tolerate sitting with our own discomfort, how much patience will we have with someone else's? You know, it's like we really, especially when we can't relate. You know, I was terrified of snakes when I was living in Australia. I'm pretty much terrified of anything that's outdoorsy and not human. So, you know, so here I am living in the countryside of Australia, and there are all sorts of things that I'm not familiar with and are bigger than me. You know, lots of pythons, you know, lots of turkeys that fly, possums and goannas. They're like gigantic lizards, you know, that can walk upstairs. So, you know, I was surrounded by some Australians who basically would go, really? So they weren't helpful. And then many people told me different strategies they used, even the Australians. Oh, always walk firmly. Boom, 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 boom. Because then they'll, you know, they're more scared of you. Oh, yeah, right, I'm gonna fall for that. You know, so, you know, but they're trying to fix it for me. If you do this, you won't run into them. And all I am is terrified. So none of this information is really useful because I'm in a state of terror, you know? So all I need is some, you know, so I did have people, I just would ask for help because I was just terrified. I get terrified thinking about how terrified I was. So what people started to do is just walk me from one place to another. So I wasn't alone, because I would run from one building to another. I mean, I'm not lying, it was pitiful, but it's how I felt, you know, I was terrified. And I was living in a little A-frame that was like 6 feet by 4 feet and was peaked, so I could only stand up in it, and no electricity, no anything, and I was down the bottom of a hill and had to walk up a long hill to get to the bathroom, which was outside. So there was just nothing good going for it, you know? So, but people who are willing to make sure I never had to walk at night by myself or, you know, except once bedtime came around, I just never drank water at night. So it's, you know, you have to do what you have to do. But the point is that this, you know, sometimes it's just helpful for someone to accept they can't fix you, but be there for you, you know. So whenever there was a snake, they used to have, the snakes would like to hang out behind the doorway of the meditation hall, where our classes were, where everything pretty much was. And they'd hang out underneath the floorboards as you walked out of the Gompa. But there was also another door. So often, someone would come up to me and say, "We've moved your shoes to the other door." You know, they would not say the word snake because that wasn't a good thing, you know? And so I just know, okay, I'm going out the other door. And no, I've never asked them to do that. That's just what they did. This was for 7 years. You know, it was so kind. I never got over my fear of snakes. I literally cannot look at a picture of a snake. I went to therapy trying to desynthesize. I had nightmares for months. I'm just not good with this, you know, so not gonna happen anytime soon. But the point is, their ability to sit with me being an insane person was really, really helpful because it took the worry away. You know, it meant I was not gonna be alone when I was faced with this scary thing, and also that it was unlikely I was gonna run across it. Because it's true, if you stomp through the, they really don't like you, so, but, You know, I didn't see a whole lot of, I mean, I saw some, but not a whole lot. But, you know, so we want to learn how to do that for ourselves, because one of our biggest fears is we are going to lose our mind. You know, that I'm going to, you know, like people who are afraid to fly, and so they can't even get on the plane because there's a fear. I know this one too. You know, that you're going to lose it, and they won't let you off the plane, and you are just going to be a raving lunatic in the presence of all these other adults. You know, which is all about what?
My reputation.
My reputation. Oh my goodness. I don't want to look like a 2-year-old child. I know I'm acting like a 2-year-old child, but I'm an adult, I shouldn't act that way. But that is called not being able to sit with my discomfort. You know, the more we can accept, oh, that's just where I am. I'm terrified. Okay. You know, I'm not going to make it worse. No, I'm not going to insist that I go to the zoo where they give you the python to hold. You know, no, I'm skipping that. But just that, okay, that's what it is. Would I prefer not to have that fear? Yes. Too bad. If I grasped after that, if I insisted that that was the only solution, that I had to get over it, what was that going to do?
Create more conflict.
Create more conflict and more fear. You know, because I wasn't succeeding, because I tried all that, you know. But so this is what we need to understand. There's a huge benefit to being able to sit with ourselves when we're not in a comfortable space and just do nothing. Just step back and go, oh, I'm overwhelmed. Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but it really is kind of like that. You just kind of sense that you're being hooked, and then being able to identify it because you've been watching yourself over a long time, and you realize, oh, that's fear arising, you know, or that's anger arising. Yeah.
So why do you think it never passed?
Who knows? Who cares? It just didn't.
What was the question?
Why do I think it never passed? I'd say because I'm right, but, you know. But really, I mean, this is the part about thinking we can control things. You know, like I can control whatever it is that causes me to have that fear. And maybe I can't. But I can handle the fear. I stayed there for 7 years. And I wouldn't have traded it for anything. The teachings I received were just incredible. I would have never, I mean, I'm glad that I didn't have, you know, that my reaction wasn't, well, I just got to get out of this place. You know? So, we have to understand, that was my motivation. I had a motivation. You know, every day climbing up that hill, I'd think, oh, you're going to really just go home instead of getting these teachings. I mean, I had to do that many days. Oh, okay, I can choose. I can go home, or I can keep walking up this hill. So it's about taking, you know, being able to understand that just because we have a strong state of mind arising doesn't mean it's correct, or that we need to listen to it. You know, we can decide, oh yeah, I'm terrified, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay in this situation because of this, this, and this, and this, and this, you know. And of course, the discomfort goes down, you know, over time, until the next time you know, like the next time you see a snake, then it's all right back in front of your face. But, you know, finally in between, it's not so terrifying. So, but the point is, it's one of the biggest terrors is sitting with your terror, because it feels out of control. So instead of like when we're angry, you know, and we're rationalizing in our mind that any sensible person would be angry, and any sensible person wouldn't like this, and any sensible person would blah, 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 you know. But meanwhile, we're acting badly because we're angry and not accepting the fact that, gee, if I would just step back for a moment and let this anger pass, you know, then I'm going to be much more in control of how I'm responding, how I am acting, as opposed to reacting. So that's, you know, that's the payoff about being able to sit with strong states of mind without doing anything, but just being with them. If it's a state of mind that needs comfort, just trying to hold it, you know, in a compassionate, loving manner, like not trying to beat yourself up, you know, like you know, like thinking I'm an idiot for being so afraid of snakes. That doesn't help.
Well, I read that Australia has the most deadliest animal.
Yeah, let's not.
The old brown snake, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that when your fear is based on reason, really
Oh, actuality.
Yeah.
Nope.
You know, but the fact that, this is what's so interesting to me about fear. You know, so when you can, especially fear like that, because it is sort of being afraid of dying, you know, is, guess what? I'm gonna die. I might not die from a snake bite, you know, and I might not die from a goanna, who I probably is vegetarian, who knows, you know, but, you know, I'm gonna die. Fear doesn't prevent that. You know, there's absolutely nothing in it that's gonna prevent, you know, the fact that I am going to die. I just don't know when, I don't know how. So I can kind of let go of that part of the fear, because that part is kind of laughable. Like, I'm gonna live forever? No. Does it mean I don't wanna take care of myself? No, I wanna take care of myself. I don't wanna be like digging the grave with my shovel, you know? I mean, that's not what I wanna do. But it's not like, you know, it's not like I can prevent that. That's out of my control. I will die. And that's one of these things that we can explore when we're not in the thick of it, and we're just not able to really think at all, but just, you know, when it sort of subsides, you know, you can even develop a sense of humor, you know, about the fact that, wow, I really lose it every, you know, and I think I'm going to die, and guess what? I am going to die. So, you know, maybe I'll be that way. Let's hope not. But, you know, so what's above that? I can't control that, so what can I control? You know, you kind of look at it in stages. Like, if you want to have a big conversation with your partner about something that's really seems to be bubbling, going on, that, you know, not looking good for the relationship if you keep letting it bubble, you know, that could be really terrifying, you know, because what can happen?
And turn into resentment.
They could leave you. You know, you could ask for what you need, and they can go, sorry, out of here.
Yep.
That's a reality. So it's not that, you know, some of our fears aren't based on the truth, but we don't know, do we? Our fears are based on something not happening yet. We don't know what's gonna happen. So we have to weigh out, do I keep letting this bubble? Or do we try, you know, do I hold, you know, kind of get a handle on my fear and put it out there? What also can't happen if you don't do that.
What?
Nothing happens.
Yeah.
It just stays the same, only it probably gets worse, because eventually it gets to a boil. And then it's sort of out of control for everybody. It's hard to handle problems when they've gotten that far. So we have to look at, you know, it's not like anybody's saying, wait until you're not afraid. That's not the key. The key is to respect your fear and support it. Say, okay, I know I'm afraid, I may, you know, and you might even use that in, you know, of course, you know, whatever. But I'm having conversations in my head at the same time, sorry. But, you know, this, I need water. So, when we're out of the thick of it, then we can kind of observe, you know. When we step back, it's always easier to step back, to trust our view when we step back some. How would somebody else look at this situation? I'm gonna be, you know, I'm at the movies now and I'm watching this unfold. You know, from this perspective, what do I see happening? To put us some distance. And also to kind of incorporate the other people involved, what's going on for them. You know, we won't know what's going on for them, you know, because we can't read their minds, but at least to acknowledge there's more than one culture in the room, you know, which is your culture, your world, you know. And we don't really speak each other's language. You know, it really is like two worlds coming together, and so having respect for that, you know, that, oh, this person's facial expression may not mean what my facial expression means when I look like that. You know, these words may not mean what I mean, you know, kind of really stepping back, you know, being able to kind of go, okay. You know, maybe I'm reading too much into this, you know, kind of thing. Also, it's really helpful to sometimes come from this can be hard, you know, to come from a place of trust. You know, that, oh, I can trust that our relationship can handle this conversation. I can trust that I'm likable enough to not have to be perfect. You know, to really come from a place that says, I'm okay, and this is what I need. I may not get what I need, you know, or what I think I need, because we're often quite wrong about what we think we need, you know, but you know, we can, you know, kind of mostly just express whatever we keep getting hooked, that feeling being hooked, you know, being able to say, I'm really scared when this happens, and I don't act well. You know, I get cranky and you know, all these, like, wait till next week. You know, Nancy Rinpoche will be here. I'll be a nervous wreck. And I always get kind of snappy with people. I'm really picturing myself not doing that this year, you know. But so this is, you know, it's this way of acknowledging, you know, that, you know, we're not perfect. But if we can acknowledge what's going on for us, perhaps we'll be, you know, we'll have more room. You know, mental space to handle it. It's just making sense. Okay. Yes.
Well, what was wonderful about the story you told, I think, unless I'm misreading, is that you were in a community that seemed to be organized in such a way so that it was helping everybody fulfill their reason for being.
No, they're just human beings who responded to my need. I
Were
mean,
you all
really.
studying Dharma together?
Yeah, so what?
Maybe the values of it were permeating the way.
Yeah,
people
maybe, but probably not.
Well,
No,
no, what I'm
the
saying
reason
is
why
that
I'm saying that.
there was some connection there, and that helped you not cure yourself of your fear, because that wasn't even relevant, but it helped you be there for the 7 years. You felt a little better when somebody was
What
accompanying
happened-
you.
Yeah, but
My
the-
point is that people feel very much alone in their fear.
Right.
They don't have a
But-
wider
and-
connected world that they're
And
part of.
what prevents that? What's the obstacle?
It is, I understand that it's imprints and
No,
maybe, I don't
no.
know.
The obstacle often is that we don't let others know.
Right, but it's a vicious cycle of feeling that
Yeah,
you're
but
disconnected.
my
and then
point
not
is,
being-
I arrived in Australia, I couldn't drive because I drive on the other side of the road. I had, you know, I didn't have resources to escape. I had to let people know
Right.
everything I needed. Every time I needed something in the store, I had to ask for help. every time, everything. I just needed help with I was a brand new nun, pretty much. I didn't know how to fill the water bowls. You know, I needed help with everything. And so I had to just risk it. And this is what's so phenomenal to me. Because trust me,
You had to be vulnerable, is that what you're saying? You had to just ask for help.
I had to let others know.
Right.
I was already, we're all vulnerable, in case you haven't known that. If you haven't discovered that, don't let it shock you, but you're probably vulnerable. So, you know, but we have to let others know if we want their help. If we need their help, they need to know. And if we let it be open, one of the things I really learned there, which is not something that's easy to do, and this is where what you're talking about really was true, because we were a nuns community, we had nuns meetings, all that stuff, so you had an avenue for certain things, was one of the things I learned was to put out my needs to everybody and not just ask my friends. And then that way, the people who felt like, oh, I can help you with that, would, and I wasn't just asking my friends for because, you know, they would have been exhausted after day 2. Not that I didn't know anybody when I got there, but, you know, you big friend. I mean, but this is what was so miraculous about it, is people rise to the occasion. This is our Buddha nature. This is what the teachings say are the reason why we can be 100% confident that we can become a Buddha, is that we have compassion for others when they're suffering. We have the desire to benefit. We want to help them. You know, we do our best. Not like a Buddha does, you know. We often help when it's convenient. We all these things. There are all sorts of limitations to our good qualities at the moment. But the truth is, we pitch in for each other. So this is something that's like, this is something we can rejoice in, is that in spite of how messy the world is, and how many things are horribly wrong with the way we treat each other, there are also billions of actions all the time of people helping each other, you know? And that's what we want to go towards. We want to be those people, not the people that are harming each other. And sometimes the very things that we do that we think are protecting us are the things that cause us to harm others. Because we're trying to shove down that fear, you know, so we get angry instead. We defend ourselves instead of giving a hug. We yell at someone instead of just saying, I'm not clear on what you're asking of me. You know, I'm confused. So we want to look at the ways in which our logic is, so that we can see the illogic when it's there. You know? And it takes a lot of reflection until you get practiced at it. Because except, you know, it's not like it ever is just like lickety-split, but when you're dealing with some certain things that are repetitive in your life, you know, you have a habit of responding this way and this way and this way again and again. You know, and you get familiar with that. Then as you work with it, eventually, because your mind is fast, and we're using our mind to help us, it can come into the picture, you know, this new strategy can arise really quickly. And the old habit energy gets overcome eventually, and you have a new habit that might, hopefully, is more skillful. I've said the word hopefully a lot. So, but this is the power that we actually have. You know, we can't control much out here. We can let people in on what we need, and they may or may not respond. But we can respond, you know, we can help the way we think about it. You know, by reflecting, by supporting our strong states of mind, by not letting us act from that place, by recognizing, oh, I'm out of control, let's not act, you know, so that we have, you know, we're better able to come from a calmer place. not to minimize the importance of the things that we're trying to, how do I want to put it? We really privilege our feelings in this society. You know, we kind of feel like, oh, well, if I'm mad, then I have every right to be mad, blah, 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 even though we're the ones suffering. It's like, please let me suffer longer. And, so we don't want to think that just because we have something strong arise, that it's correct. Just because it's there. It is there. We don't have to feel bad about the fact that it's arisen. Oh, it's arisen. There it is. Da, 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 da. But we don't have to give it any power. We don't have to say, oh, and I must listen to you. We can have a state of mind arise and realize, oh, well, I'm angry or I'm impatient. Well, that's an exaggeration of something negative, something I perceive as negative. That's what it means, So it's not accurate. It's a distortion. It's just looking at what is negative. So I want to step back from that distortion and try to look at the big picture again, the more balanced picture, not the one that's just focusing on what is negative. And I know we don't like to hear this, but we also want to do this when it's all positive. That love is blind stuff doesn't always work out so well. So we want to be able to step back and look at the whole picture. So that we can become a reliable support for ourselves. So we can cultivate our inner wisdom and develop trust in it. And that trust includes that awareness that sometimes you don't know what you're doing. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes all these things. That doesn't mean you don't have any wisdom. Doesn't mean that you're not sometimes on track. It just means we have to check up. And that when we're under the influence of a very strong emotion, just like someone under the influence of drugs or alcohol, we're not reliable in those states of mind. Yeah.
I had a friend tell me that when you're dealing with an unsafe person, you can't sit down and have a nice little conversation about your feelings. He said always write a letter because people will read the letter, they'll listen to you, because when some people are such anger addicts, they get into a zone like a dog, and it's impossible to have any rational conversation with them. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I think that's true. That's about that's about someone else. I was really focusing on us when we're the one that's out of control. How do we take care of ourselves so that we don't have consequences for that state of mind that are undesirable for ourselves? So we definitely have to use that inner wisdom, like the crying baby. If the person we're trying to interact with is out of control due to their anger, due to their lust, due to their greed, due to their whatever, they're not reliable. And that's not a good time to have a conversation. You need to give them the space for that to check. And they may not take it. We don't have control over what they do, but we can walk away. As being the one who always jumped into the thick of it, and my partner who would go, I'm leaving now. And I followed them from room to room. And then they go, no, I'm really leaving now. Sometimes you just have to be odd one out, because the other person's out of control, and it's not your fault they're out of control, that's their responsibility. We can be a condition, though, to make it worse. And we don't want to do that with violent people. We don't want to do that with, we don't have to take harm from someone else. But sometimes we may have to listen to their suffering. You know, and they may not be very skillful in expressing it. But we have to weigh that in. We have to, if we notice that we're getting hooked, and now we're gonna have two people having, it's time to like, okay, let's step back for a minute. Go for a walk around the block. You know, table it for another day. We need to give a lot of space. Because this is work. Working with our mind is just like going to the gym. You know? I mean, think about it. You go to the gym and you're supposed to, lift that weight to the point where you can't lift it again. And we do that by choice. Oh, let's do that. Well, so working with the mind is like that. Sometimes it takes an awful lot of effort. An awful lot of restraint. Okay, I'm not going to act on this impatience. I need to learn how to keep my mouth shut. Or I need to learn to speak up. It really depends. Because sometimes the hook shuts us down. So we need to give ourselves space for that. Support that. But it doesn't mean we don't want to reflect on it and going, okay, is that the best response? Is there another more effective way I can respond? But a big key, I think, is really that ability to just pause and recognize, wow, I'm afraid, or I'm angry, or I'm, really want that to go my way, Greed is taken over. Whatever it is, that in that moment we just want to hold that space, not hate ourselves for having it, let it not give it any more power. Because our rationalizations for why we're feeling that way give it an awful lot of power. And there's no need for that. It's just there. Now when we're reflecting on it, then we might look at, is there a pattern to this? Try to understand it better. With our habits of mind, we can usually find some illogic going on. And then we can help counter that illogic. But that takes that ability to give space and sitting with it instead of running away from it every time it arises or turning it to something else. Thoughts, questions, arguments? Yes?
I've been learning a lot working with shelter dogs
Mm-hmm.
For myself, because I feel pretty fearful and anxious, they're lunging at me.
Yeah,
out of
I can
control.
understand that.
So I have to push back. I have to learn to control it, otherwise they won't get to go out for a walk. So I'm working on myself, working with them.
So working on your own fears so that you're not just, I'm not going there.
Because they need a walk.
Yes.
So I have to stop it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been a good lesson.
Yeah. It's really interesting, isn't it, when you realize, oh, I don't have to act from this space. It might arise. I may not be able to, make it not arise. Eventually, over time, though, it does. It reduces, at least, because you know you're not in danger. You learn that. Well, yeah. But then sometimes you have to choose, don't you? Like if you choose to work with wild animals, all the animal rescue places, you may get hurt. You do everything you can to safeguard yourself, but you might get hurt, and that's a choice you're making. I'm choosing, we get hurt all over the place, and sort of doesn't matter where we are, we can get hurt. But, I wouldn't choose to work with wild animals because that wouldn't be fair to them. So, because they never get a walk, ever. So, but the point is, if you have that willingness to work with your own mind, we can do all kinds of things we thought we never could do. Because it's our mind that's getting in the way. It isn't the actual action. It's our fears, our worries, our, anger, our, oh, it's not fair, all those states of mind that arise that get in the way. And we want to be able to start to understand that we don't have to come from that place. But it takes practice. And it takes a lot of gentleness and compassion for ourselves and others. Because we need to remember, just like we can get out of control in our own mind, that's what others are doing, So the difficult people, the people we say they're difficult, they are the same, they're just another human being who doesn't know what they're doing, who wants happiness, who doesn't want suffering, and they are acting from these strong states of mind that arise. Now that doesn't mean we have to marry them, just because we're working on our mind. It just means, though, that being able to see this isn't some evil being, it's just another human being who's out of control due to their mind, their misunderstanding. We may not be able to change that, have any condition on it, do, whatever, but we don't have to hate them. We can just understand that just like me, they're not always in control of what's arising for them. That's really important to, that helps that two-way street of giving ourselves some space to not be perfect and to give others space not to be perfect. Especially if, like say maybe you have a really good handle on anger. So you're not one that tends to get riled up, that's not someplace you go. So it may be hard for you to understand how other people get completely out of control with it. So being able to step back going, well, I may not understand it. Yay, I'm happy I don't understand it. I mean, that's a good thing not to have that habit, but being able to understand that they are struggling. Nobody really wants to lose control with their temper. But we have a tendency of judging ourselves and judging others very harshly instead of working with it. Yeah, Chris.
I've noticed in my own experience, especially with fear, it's usually based upon this little acronym, false evidence appearing real. It's usually, I have a misapprehension. And that misapprehension is what allows that to come up. And in the process of understanding that, I go to it. And if I sit with it, like she's saying, for me, I've noticed, I've had some extreme circumstances in the day. And it's been a very useful thing to stare the wolf down, so to speak. You stare the dog down.
Well, and really this recognizing that fear is about something that hasn't happened yet. And so stepping back and realizing, okay, maybe this won't happen. That's one of the possibilities, is that it won't happen. It doesn't mean that when you're putting yourself in situations where harm can easily arise, like working with rescue animals, that you don't have a healthy sense of, I need to be alert. That's different from being on guard. On guard is sort of like, I'm assuming it's going to go wrong, and I'm ready for it. All weaponed up, But when you're alert, it just means you look, you're not putting you're not being in, oh, nothing bad will happen to me kind of attitude. You're going, well, there's a risk here, and so I'll be alert to it. But it may not happen, it may happen. But I'm going to, I'll be on it if I see the signals, that I need to be alert to, so I can be safe. Instead, we often arm ourselves, So, what the teachings say is instead of putting on, picking up the weapons, and building a fort around our heart, we can armor ourselves with joyous effort and loving kindness and compassion. that those are actually what gives us the strength to deal with challenging situations. So, we talk a lot about the bad, the not skillful states of mind that we have, but we also have all those others, those helpful ones, those ones who even come up with strategies for you when you don't ask for them, like, I'll move your shoes from the back door to the front door, you know, that we have this ability to, you know, when we think about how we treat our close friends, you know, how often we're able to step back, you know, like if their energies come, you know, they walk in, and they're obviously disturbed about something, and we're able to kind of step back and not take it personally and kind of give them some space and see if we can be of help, you know, all that kind of stuff. If we can take those skills that we have with our friends and try to extend them out towards people we don't know, and just coming from a place of trust that they're probably like my friends. They may not be, you know, but being able, instead of putting on the armor of weapons, put on the armor of loving kindness and compassion, you know, things can unfold differently. Does that make sense? Okay. So say hello to each other, since we're almost gone, and I'd hate for you not to at least, you know, learn somebody's name.
How you doing? Good, good.
Steve-O, how are you? What's up, bro? Good to see you today. Good to see you. How are you?
Good. Good.
You just kind of go a little deep into the pool and just, that's really what it is. That's all. No, it's just more, yeah, it's just more esoteric material, you know? Although it's, what's simple, complex, and what isn't complex. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know, it's never really,
I am ringing the bell.
that was the kind, gentle bell. Gotta get your gong. Get your gong.
Okay, so. See, now we're not strangers. Doesn't take much, does it? It's very cool how open we are most of the time. I think it's, you know, depending on the conditions, you know, so it's a nice quality we have. So next Sunday, Yanzi Rinpoche's coming. Yanzi Rinpoche's, he was at my ordination, actually. He was a monk at the time. And he's not a monk now, but he was a monk at the time. And he was at my ordination. He has lots of good qualities. He wrote the book, Practicing the Path, based on a 2-month teaching he gave at Tashida Meditation Center in India. He is head of Matripa Institute in Portland, which is a Buddhist university. What should I say?
Did you say he was a Rinpoche?
Yes. So Yanzi Rinpoche means precious one. It is a title that's accorded for different reasons, but one of the reasons it's accorded is when you're a recognized reincarnation of a teacher from a previous life. So like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he's the head of our organizations to my left, Buddha. Is a recognized reincarnation of someone called the Laudo Lama, who lived in Laudo. You know, there's a whole book about it. It's very interesting. So, so Yanzi Rinpoche is, I don't know who he's a recognized. I should, but I've never looked it up. So sorry. But anyway, huh?
We might not know who the person is anyway.
No, I wouldn't know. Yes, because they're dead. I mean, that's an automatic thing. So, you know, that's usually the case. Lama Yeshe is considered, like, who is the original founder, the Kadas. They think he was an abbess of a nunnery. So he, I'm sorry?
I laughed.
Yeah, but, so it's always good to, in the West to have these signs that, you know, women were taken care of at some point. So those of us who have issues with this like it, so I'm one of those. So anyway, but it indicates that they bring some good qualities with them. You know, so, but he's a really wonderful teacher. So he'll unfortunately only be here one day. He's coming through town, so he very kindly offers to pop in when that happens. So, but we'll have the meditation as usual, and we'll see how that goes because I'll be leading that. As I said, I'll be a little neurotic, but because as a nun, I always feel like I should know what I'm doing, and I don't. And you know, I mean, as far as helping with a Rinpoche, it's like, I'm sorry. I never lived in a monastery, so I'm not much help. But I feel like I should be. So.
And you are.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, and I can't chant, so we can't sing the prayers in Tibetan because it's a sad, sorrowful state of affairs when I try. So, all of this. So that's my whole thing. So that's what I bring to the picture, you know. But we're going to have the meditation anyway because clearly I'll need it. So, but that means in between the meditation and his starting the teachings, we'll, you know, clear out of, well, maybe we won't. We may be interrupted, you know. Nicole might pop her head in and say, he's here, which is our clue to stand up. So, anyway, but it should be a very worthwhile experience. So, so that's one thing. That's next Sunday. Tomorrow's Monday. Tomorrow's Monday, Meditation 101 continues on Monday night with Jackie Keeley. Tuesday during the day, there's a Medicine Buddha Puja at 11 a.m., which is a prayer ritual. Thursday night, we continue with the Discovering Buddhism on the topic of bodhicitta, which is the wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And this Saturday, there's a day of meditation that's also led by Jackie Keeley. So you can come for the morning, come for the afternoon, or come for the whole day. So if you'd like, if meditation is your thing, or even if it's not your thing, if you'd like it to be more of your thing. So come enjoy that with Jackie. And then, like I said, Sunday, Yanzi Rinpoche will be here. And if you want to help volunteer for something, see this woman, Nicole.
And also, I just wanted to let anybody know who might be interested, have lots of Dharma knowledge and experience. We are looking for a spiritual program coordinator. So
which the main thing is being organized.
Yes, and we need help in that area.
So, you know, let that bubble in your mind if you're one of these people. So, you know, that could do such a thing.
And you can always just email me too on my cards out there, my email.
Okay. Of course, she's running away in a week. but, and for a
It's
month.
just something to think about.
Yes.
Someone feels like, oh.
So you have time. You won't have to commit anytime soon. So this is good. All right. So now we want to remember the reason, the motivation we said in the beginning, the intention we set, the reason why we came, and we want to rejoice that we showed up. And that's the biggest deal, is showing up, and then that you exposed yourself to some information that hopefully will be useful or not. It doesn't matter. In terms of, showing up is the condition in order for things to happen. So rejoice about that, and you can rejoice in all the acts of kindness that have been happening while we were here. And then we want to make the wish that these, if it is correct, as the Buddha said, that our positive actions have positive results. They place positive potential for positive things in the future. We want to share them with others, so that, may they ripen upon others to help remove their suffering until there are no suffering living beings at all. So we will recite the dedication verses on page 246. Okay? May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer from evil or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the mysteries of the world. So try to set a positive intention for whatever it is you're doing next, and take good care. Have a meaningful week.